Thank you very much. Dear Mikolas, dear President Zorinda, thank you for inviting me to address the European Ideas Forum. I've done this before, not in this capacity, but one where we have been able to reflect on what Europe is going through. And the title, Reshaping Europe Through Crisis, I think obliges me to delve straight into what we are living now without too much introduction, since Mikolas has done it already. Today we're living in a situation where the invasion of Ukraine is continuing unabatedly. Pushed back on the battlefield, the Kremlin has turned its war machine onto civilians, depriving them of their basic necessities: water, electricity, heating. And as a result of Russia's targeted attacks on critical civilian infrastructure, 10 million Ukrainians are today currently without electricity. They think they can break the Ukrainian spirit into submission, but they underestimate their resolve. This war on our continent has forced us to look inwards, to rediscover our founding principles, to understand again why we must stand up and stand firm. In Europe, we believe in freedom, we believe in dignity, we believe in peace. But peace can only come with dignity and with liberty. Without that, there can be nothing else. Without that, we have an illusion. And this is why we must keep supporting Ukraine for their future and for ours. This is why the European Parliament launched our Generators for Hope campaign. Our aim is to donate power generators and transformers to help Ukrainians get through the harsh winter again. So before I continue, my appeal is for you to keep this humanitarian catastrophe in mind, to remember that while we are talking about the reshaping of Europe, we have to remember that the future, our future, is intertwined with all those people who today are suffering in Ukraine. So I urge you to join this Generators for Hope campaign, and I urge you to do all that you can to convince others in your cities, towns and villages to join too. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living through a perfect storm of instability with global inflation, climate change, food scarcity, migration, unemployment and energy and electricity prices spiking. And all of this is framed in the context of war and political uncertainty, propaganda and disinformation that risks driving more people, ever more people, to the comfort of the fringes. Throughout the history of our European project, many were the times when the price of stability meant that difficult decisions had to be taken. This was true 70 years ago, when the price to be paid was the pooling in of coal and steel. This was true 60 years ago, when the price of combating overproduction of food led to the creation of our common agricultural policy. This was true after the fall of the Berlin Wall, where the price of catering for a union of 12 to a union of 15, and then to a union of 25, and today 27, meant reconstructing our institutional framework. It was also true during the financial crisis, where the price of stability called for deeper coordination on economic policy. This has also been true with the pandemic, where the price of shielding our economies from collapse destined the creation of recovery and resilience facility. And more importantly, where the price of saving lives meant coming together more than ever before to procure millions upon millions of vaccines for European citizens and beyond. Today, we are once again at a moment where we are required to take difficult decisions. This moment is not just a test for Europe, it is its most decisive exam. For the first time in our union's modern history, we are dealing with what we would call a cauldron of crises, each one posing its own set of consequences while exacerbating the others. So the urgency for us to adapt is very, very real. There are no simple solutions. There are no guarantees. Anybody who tells you otherwise does not understand the scale of the challenge. But despite the vast difficulties that we face, I am here to say that I am optimistic that together we can weather the storm. Because the European Union has a history of thriving in the face of adversity. We know, or we understand, how to turn crises into opportunities. And I am convinced that we can stand up to the challenges that we face, to answer the questions that people ask of us, explain them, no matter how difficult it is, communicate on them, because that is what they want of us in order for all of us to move forward together. There are holes that we need to fix when it comes to our energy policy. Even if today we are in a better position than we were a few months ago, we are still very vulnerable to a relative gas shortage coupled with inelastic demand and the external factor of weaponization of gas and other fossil fuels by Russia. In the Martin Center recent publication on Europe's tough energy choices, you outline a series of short and long-term measures to tackle this issue. In the short term, we need solidarity between member states at a time of emergency. This is why the joint procurement mechanism for gas is necessary. It is the only way for us to find a common way out without outbidding each other when it matters the most. We also need to look at decoupling electricity prices from gas prices. This is an extraordinary but temporary measure that will, together with windfall taxes, help share the burden. In the longer term, we need to shape a credible vision for our energy market of the future without abandoning our climate ambitions. One does not negate the other, though many in Europe today are trying to do precisely that. Common actions, solidarity in gas supply, and the creation of the credible energy single market with solid interconnections need to happen if we are to build resilience in the future. Rising energy prices is, of course, fueling inflation, resulting in less disposable ideas for households and businesses. Double-digit inflation and rapidly rising interest rates are causing a tsunami, wiping off the value of people's homes, salaries, and national budgets. Our economy recovered well after the pandemic, thanks to our economic governance framework and our next generation EU. So the foundations of our economy are strong. But now we must again set the right conditions to place the EU economy back on a stable path of growth. Debt is not discretionary. It must and it will be repaid. But we cannot allow the servicing of our loans to weigh down our capacity for action. On the other hand, on the contrary, debt can only be repaid if we manage to keep growing our economies with real, sustainable growth. That is the only way in which the public spending that is necessary would be possible. In the Martin Center March 2022 publication on changing Europe's strategic culture, the authors observe that Europe is at a turning point when it comes to its thinking on security and defense. I agree. Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine has sent shockwaves throughout our union and has exposed us to all our vulnerabilities when it comes to our security and defense. And on this, we are convinced Europe cannot keep kicking the can down the road. A comprehensive security and defense union needs to be at the top of our agenda. We need to make better use of our defense spending and avoid duplication in a pan-European defense capacity, in complement with NATO and not in competition. This will require a complete overhaul of our security and defense apparatus and infrastructure. Fortunately, many of the building blocks are already in place. The EU Strategic Compass for Security and Defence, together with the Defence Investment Gap Analysis, make up a solid basis to fortify our security and defence architecture by 2030. When it comes to strengthening our security and defence in a new age of hybrid warfare, it will be imperative that we take a holistic approach. We have done well to ban Kremlin propaganda tools. Yet we know that Russia continues to weaponize information and to push disinformation and misinformation. Our friends in the Baltics, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia have long warned us of these dangers, having already themselves been targets of Kremlin cyber attacks. The European Parliament itself has not been immune to this. Putin and his allies have gone to great lengths to weaponize the perceived divisions in our union. But I must say, with little success. But their lack of success does not mean that decisions are not needed for us to find a common way forward. Our Europe has welcomed millions of fleeing Ukrainians into our hearts and our homes. I am proud of our response and more convinced than ever that we can find the political will to move on these issues. And even other issues, such as ones that have been left on the shelf for far too long, like migration. I understand that there's no quick fix to the migration challenges that the European Union faces, but delaying these decisions are no longer an option. We need a comprehensive way forward together and in the spirit of sincere cooperation that is fair and humane with those seeking protection, firm with those who are not eligible, and strong with traffickers who exploit some of the most vulnerable human beings on our planet. We need to move and we need to think long term. And speaking about long term, allow me to say a quick word on the topic of health. The pandemic has revealed massive shortfalls in member states' healthcare systems. When it comes to curtailing the spread of viruses or facilitating access to specialized treatments, we have seen, proven with facts, that the solution often lies in more cross-border cooperation. And this must mean working towards something that the European Parliament has long called for, working towards a European health union. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of Europe is one that has been forged in crisis. At every point in modern day history, when Europe faced a reckoning, we have responded by moving closer together. The doctrine is one that consistently places cooperation above competition. It is one that has created prosperity, strong democracies, iron-fenced protection of personal liberties. It is one that works. And yet, this works in alleviating pressure in the short term, but does little to shield us from future, unknown, unpredicted shocks. And we are looking towards the 2024 European elections. And as we do so, we need to have a vision for the future. But to do this, we need to have the strategic foresight to think ahead. We need to show people that our project is not just fit for purpose at crisis management, but at crisis preparedness too. I am proud that the European Parliament has been a leader in this field, and here allow me to take a moment to credit Secretary General Klaus Welle for his contribution to our foresight capacities and to the European project as a whole, which I'm sure he will continue with you here. Last words. All the issues that I have outlined will not be easy to implement. There will never be easy politics. Many of the solutions will be forged with difficulty through tough negotiations and met with compromise. This is what Europe is all about. And this is precisely where the strength of our union lies. It is how we will emerge stronger, more united, more determined than ever before. And so, as we look for the solutions to the difficult questions that lie in front of us, our response to all of them must be one: Europe, wholeheartedly and without reservations. Thank you.